Hi, in this video we're going to be talking about the importance of progression when looking at rehabilitation for an Achilles tendinopathy. We know that exercise is one of the best treatments for an Achilles tendinopathy, but it also is common that people get a bit stuck with it. So we've tried it for a bit and we may not get all of the symptoms disappearing, things may not be going according to plan. And why is that? And one of the common reasons is that it's not being progressed or made more difficult over time. I'm Ali, I'm one of the physios from treatmyachilles.com. We're an online virtual physiotherapy platform treating all things related to Achilles, where we can assess and give you advice and a rehabilitation program via a call. So we're going to talk about the progression of exercises today and why they might be important. So what I mean by this is if we're doing a rehab program and we're doing the same exercise regularly, so I'm doing the same thing, the same number, the same frequency of what I'm doing, and also the same rest periods, the same number of reps or sets, I'm doing the same weight, and I'm doing this repeatedly. If that's happening and I'm not changing and nothing is changing in my symptoms or my function, so what I can do or can't do, it may be that I need to change that exercise. And it might not be the exercise itself that needs to be changed, it just may need to be made more difficult. We know when we look at strength and conditioning literature that a muscle takes time to get stronger. And we also know that it needs to be what's called progressively overloaded. So what that means in this instance is that we have challenged that muscle enough during an exercise that it's feeling tired or it's completely fatigued. We are looking at that in regards to an Achilles tendinopathy. There are many other factors that we need to consider, most of which relate to symptoms. So how it feels in the moment when you're doing that exercise, but also what happens over that period of time after you've stopped and for the next 24 hours. When we're looking at progressing and overloading a muscle, what we're aiming is to send a signal to your body to say, that exercise has tired me out, and because it's tired me out, I need to grow more muscle and make more muscle to be able to cope with it. If we stick at an easy level, or at a level that was difficult and is now the same and easy and we're not progressing, our body says, we don't need to make any more muscle here, we don't need to get stronger, we're coping very well with what the demands we've been asked to do. If we were to stop exercising altogether, then we start to get a little bit weaker as we're not challenging that muscle and making things stronger. So the muscles we're talking about with an Achilles tendinopathy are those in your calf. Your calf muscles, which you can see from the picture, come down and create that Achilles tendon. When we're getting stronger calf muscles, we then in turn get a more robust Achilles tendon, and that more robustness means that we're more likely to be able to do things such as running, jumping, hopping, more explosive sports, and walking longer distances and at speed. We mentioned that we need to have a look at what's going on with symptoms with people with Achilles tendinopathy, and that informs our decision as to what exercise we would start somebody at, but that's not the only reason. We also are going to be looking at what you can currently do, what your goals are. So is your goal to walk your dog or to run an ultramarathon? Are you fit and healthy, or is there anything else going on in your general health? What your preferences and access to different equipment and exercises, and what we're going to be doing and how you can fit that into your life with work and other responsibilities and activities. So there is no prescription. We're not cars in a garage where we go and we take out your calf and your Achilles, we do a sets and reps of this particular exercise and everyone does the same thing, and then we put that calf and Achilles back in or a new one back in and we're back to normal again. Humans don't work like that. We have many components to this, our thoughts and our belief, and like I said, the makeup of our body as well, and what's going on in our lives at that moment. So therefore, there isn't the necessity for everybody to start at the same level and everybody to progress to the same level. We're going to be looking at a particular research paper. This research paper came out in 2022 by Demangeot et al. And what this is a paper where it's looked at lots of studies looking at what load your Achilles tendon takes when it does different activities, including exercises, walking and running. It looked at loads of different papers and it made all of that together, and then looking at those results of all of those papers, put things into categories. Those categories were exercises that were easier with the load, less load going through the tendon than walking, and ones that were greater than that. And we'll come on to discuss those categories in a moment. So we're going to use the table from this paper just to illustrate some ideas of exercises that show less load than walking, a similar load amount to walking, and a load greater than walking. Please again remember you don't need to do these exercises as part of your rehab program, and you may never need to do these exercises as part of your rehab program. They're here to illustrate the point that things need to be progressed and they need to be done so well over time to help replicate those forces needed for these activities, and those we should be guided by a practitioner. So where you're starting from, how you progress and where you end up to, it's best to speak to somebody and get that advice based on your particular individual Achilles tendon problem. So if we look at the first set of this table, so the activities lower load than walking, we've got a list here. Now some of those are pretty simple exercises right at the beginning and they're a bit easier than others, but some can be quite surprising. So a seated heel raise, in that it's talking about having 1.25% of your body weight also loading a single leg whilst doing that. A low step up, with that being the lead leg, and a double leg standing calf raise. Now they're relatively common exercises and they're showing that they are lower load than walking would be. Now if you can currently walk but you find these exercises a problem and are difficult to do, that doesn't mean don't walk until you can do these exercises. Again, they're just illustrating a point here in healthy people, and remember that's in healthy people, not people with an Achilles tendinopathy, what load exercises replicate. Then it moves on to a little bit more difficult exercises in that section. So that's where you can see a seated calf raise with 150% of your body weight. And when it says trail leg, your behind leg, doing things like low step ups and downs and lunges. So then we start to look at, okay, well, what's similar to walking? What could we aim for somebody to do if they're still having pain with walking and they've been doing some of these exercises? Well, we might start to look in that second section. So can they start to jump without pain and CMJ counter move jump, so jump and jump back up again? Can they drop down from a height and land? Can you do a high step up? And a single leg heel raise is in that same section. So that's one of the most common exercises that you see for an Achilles tendinopathy, and it's one of the most common ones we probably prescribe too. As to how many and how often, off a step, on a step, with weight, that's very dependent on what you would be assessed to see. But it's just giving you an idea that a single leg calf raise is similar amounts to walking. Then we go a bit higher, and higher again, we're now looking at rebound calf raise. So that's when you're on your tiptoes and you bounce up and down at speed. And a standing heel raise of 125% of your body weight. Now, bearing in mind, you're standing on your leg, you're 100% of your body weight. That's an addition of another 25% to that. And then we've got a bent knee standing calf raise on one leg, and that's at 110%, so you plus 10% of your body weight. So if I weigh 70 kilos, I'm looking to hold for my bent knee 7 kilos, and I'm looking to hold for my straight knee 17 and a half, 18 kilos. But again, do I need to have this? Well, no, not really. If my symptoms are improving before I get to that point, and if I can do the activities that I want to do, then I may not need to get to that level of the rehab. What this is doing is just informing us as clinicians as to maybe why things might not be as good as they could be if you can't do those activities. And then it goes on to look at hopping and hopping side to side and in all different types of movements, which may be relevant to some sports and not relevant to others. So things where you would expect to be jumping, like basketball or volleyball or gymnastics, may be more relevant to look at those activities. So there are limitations to this study, and the limitations are that not all of the studies they looked at did the same measurements in the same way to come up with what was the same or the different to walking. It also only looked at healthy people, didn't look at people with an Achilles tendinopathy, and no one has looked at these in their own context of are they suitable to do in a rehab program, and do they help people with Achilles tendinopathy? So that's something that the authors have suggested is better for future investigation and future research. Now, bearing in mind there are other research papers out there talking about single leg calf raises and eccentric calf raises. By that, that's the lowering down phase that has been biased more. There's other ones talking about doing these with weight. There's ones talking about doing these with hopping. And there's also ones talking about just doing a lift and a hold. All of those have been shown to have positive effects on the rehabilitation for an Achilles tendinopathy. And therefore we know strengthening works, we know progressive overload of strengthening works, but we also know, as we said before, we're not parts that can be just taken out, replaced and things go away. We need to look at you as a whole, and you need to have a look at your general health, and we also need to look at your thoughts and your feelings and anything that can be helped with pain psychology. That is also an important component, especially if you've had pain for a long period of time. There are some really interesting videos with our pain psychologist, Dr. Caroline Marlowe, that would be of interest to look at in regards to the pain psychology part to everything. So our take-home message today is that if you are doing some exercises for your Achilles tendinopathy, strength ones have been proven to be the most effective. Have they got you to a point where you're better but not quite? Is it because we've not been progressed well? Are there other factors in your rehabilitation that need to be looked at as to why you're not moving forward as best you can? And have you given it enough time for those muscles to get stronger, therefore creating a more robust tendon? If you would like to find out any more information about our service or book an appointment, please see the links below.